Hello, gentlemen. What does a woman think, or what is she feeling when you stop chasing her? It's not just a question of curiosity, it's a question of energy, one that every man silently confronts when he begins to withdraw not out of anger, but out of awakening. Because chasing doesn't always look desperate on the outside, but on the inside, it often comes from a quiet fear. The fear of being invisible, of being forgotten, of not being enough unless you keep proving it. At Stoic Station, we don't chase those fears, we face them, not to conquer her attention but to reclaim our own clarity. We don't react, we observe. And when the silence comes, we don't try to fill it, we listen to what it's actually saying. So today, I'm not here to hype you up or give you tricks to win her back. I'm here to speak directly to the man who's been carrying too much, saying too little, and wondering why his consistency hasn't brought connection. This message is for the one who stayed present long after he stopped being met. Because when you stop chasing, something shifts, not just in her, but in you. And that shift deserves to be understood. So if that speaks to where you are right now, pause, breathe. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Stoic Station, like this video, and stay with me. You're about to learn what her silence really means and what it reveals about the man you're becoming. Now, let's dive in. Part 1. Her silence was the truth. You refused to hear. There's a quiet shift that happens in a man's heart when he finally stops chasing. Not because he's angry, and not because he wants to prove a point, but because something within him breaks open, and not in a way that makes him collapse, but in a way that sets him free. A moment arrives when he stops reaching, stops explaining, stops trying to earn a place in someone's life who never clearly offered him one. It's not an act of revenge, it's not even about her anymore. It's the calm that comes from finally recognizing that chasing someone who only meets you halfway isn't strength. It's self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. And when you reach that stillness, when you stop pouring energy into a space that no longer welcomes it, something unexpected happens. Some women feel relieved. It's not that they disliked you. It's not that they didn't appreciate parts of what you offered. But deep down, they didn't know how to say the words that needed to be said. I'm not feeling this the same way you are. Maybe they were too kind. Maybe they didn't want to hurt you. Or maybe they didn't even fully understand their own emotions, so they didn't say much. They just started doing less replying, less initiating, less showing up. And you, hoping it was just a phase, kept filling the gap. But the truth is, they weren't waiting for clarity. They were waiting for you to walk away so they wouldn't have to say what they didn't have the courage to admit. Her silence wasn't indecision. It was the answer you didn't want to hear. It's a painful realization. Because in your mind, silence always left room for possibility. A chance that she might need space, might be figuring things out, might come back around. And so you waited, not because you were weak, but because you believed in what you felt. You thought your consistency would inspire commitment. You thought your presence would be enough to spark hers. But consistency without reciprocity doesn't build connection. It builds confusion. And presence without invitation only exhausts the one offering it. Her silence was your answer. And maybe that answer was colder than you expected. Maybe it hurt more than a harsh goodbye. But it was the truth you needed to face. Not because you were wrong to care, but because you deserved clarity. And she had already made her decision through her distance. She just didn't say it with words. She said it with delay, with detachment, with indifference so casual it left you questioning your worth. But here's where the shift happens. When you stop mistaking that silence for mystery and start seeing it for what it is, closure. Not the kind you get through a final conversation, but the kind you earn through emotional sobriety. You stop checking your phone, stop wondering what you did wrong, stop rehearsing messages in your head that might reopen a door that was never really open to begin with. You stop feeding a connection that was surviving off your energy alone. That moment, when you finally go quiet, is more powerful than you realize, because you're not just walking away from her. You're walking away from the version of yourself that believed you had to perform for love, from the version that mistook effort for intimacy, from the illusion that if you just held on long enough, she'd finally see you clearly. But in that silence, you start to see clearly for yourself. You see that a relationship where only one person tries is not love. It's emotional labor without reward. You see that being a good man doesn't mean waiting indefinitely for someone who never asked you to stay. You see that love, when real, doesn't require explanation. It reciprocates. It shows up. It doesn't leave you questioning your own value in the dark. And so you stop. Not with a speech, not with drama, just quietly, firmly, finally. It might feel like you lost something, and in a way you did. You lost the fantasy. You lost the hope that she might one day match your effort. But you didn't lose her. Not really, because someone who never fully chose you, who never truly showed up, was never fully yours to begin with. What you did lose, though, is far more important. You lost the need to prove your worth to someone who was never looking. You lost the habit of abandoning yourself in the name of loyalty. You lost the desperation that kept you tied to someone else's silence. And what you gain in return is something deeper than validation: peace. Not just the kind that comes from no longer chasing, but the kind that comes from finally being honest with yourself. That what you wanted wasn't wrong. That your desire to connect, to show up, to love fully wasn't something to be ashamed of. But that it was given to the wrong person, and that's a truth worth facing, even if it stings. Because now you get to rebuild. You get to pour that same energy back into yourself, into your boundaries, your peace, your clarity. And when you do, something shifts inside you for good. You no longer crave her response. You no longer wait for her message. You no longer need her presence to confirm your value, because walking away didn't break you. It revealed you. And for the first time in a long time, you're not running after someone who won't meet you. You're standing in stillness, in truth, and in the kind of quiet that speaks louder than words ever could. Part 2. She misses the mirror, not the man. It usually happens when you least expect it. After weeks or months of silence, when your mind has finally started to find its rhythm again, a familiar name lights up your screen. A late-night message, a like on an old post, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" And just like that, something stirs in you, a mix of emotion and confusion. You wonder if this is it, if she's finally realized your worth, if she's come back because she truly sees now what she couldn't before. You want to believe it, because deep down, there's a part of you that never really stopped hoping she would. But the truth doesn't always come wrapped in sentiment. Sometimes she doesn't return because she misses you. She returns because she misses being missed. What she's reaching for isn't your soul, your growth, or your calm presence. It's the version of herself she saw reflected in your desire, that feeling of being wanted, being chased, being admired. And now that you've stepped away, now that your energy is no longer orbiting her world, she feels that emptiness, not as grief for your connection, but as a loss of her own reflection. She misses the mirror, not the man. This is the moment where many men falter. The emotional bait is subtle, but powerful. You've done the work. You've held the line. You've stopped chasing. And suddenly, her return feels like validation. Like all your patience is finally paying off. But if you rush in now, if you mistake her curiosity for commitment, you risk losing everything you've gained. Because here's what's changed. You're not the same man she once knew. You're not hungry for signs of approval. You're not moved by breadcrumbs. You've outgrown the need to be noticed by someone who once ignored you. You're not the man who begs to be chosen anymore. So when she returns, don't fall back into old rhythms. Don't over-explain. Don't romanticize her reappearance. Observe. Let her actions, not your hopes, reveal her truth. Ask yourself not just what she's saying, but what she's showing. Is there consistency? Is there emotional presence? Is she reaching out to reconnect, or just to confirm she still has access? Real love doesn't knock once and wait to be let in. It keeps showing up. It builds. It stays. If her message is followed by silence, if her interest fades the moment you stop feeding it again, then nothing has changed. You're not being chosen. You're being used to soothe a moment of emotional boredom. The power now is not in how you respond, but in whether you respond with clarity or old patterns. You don't need to shut her out. You just need to stay rooted. You need to remember what it cost you to break free from the cycle of proving your worth. You need to protect the quiet strength you've built in her absence. Because love isn't proven by who reaches out first. It's proven by who stays consistent when it matters. And what you deserve is not a return out of nostalgia. You deserve someone who sees you not for how you make them feel, but for who you are, and shows up accordingly. So let her come back if she will. But let your stillness be the filter that reveals whether it's real, or just a reflection chasing attention. Part 3. You weren't in love. You were on stage. There's a painful truth many men don't recognize until much later. You weren't in love. You were performing. And not because your feelings weren't real, but because the relationship wasn't. You thought you were building something deep, something lasting. But in reality, you were playing every part, writing every line, setting every scene, hoping the person on the other end would finally join the act. You sent the good morning texts. You planned the outings. You checked in, showed up, stayed late, gave her space when she needed it, and closeness when she asked. You offered your attention like it was the one thing that might finally tip the scale, like devotion itself could unlock her heart. But it didn't, because she never had to earn what you kept giving away for free. You were consistent, you were present, you were loyal. But none of that created the connection you hoped for, because loyalty without reciprocity doesn't build intimacy. It drains you, slowly, quietly, and then, without realizing it, you start to disappear. Not because she left you, but because you kept abandoning yourself in the name of holding on. That's what most men miss. It wasn't rejection that broke you, it was self-erasure. Every time you tolerated indifference, every time you excused her lack of effort, every time you swallowed your need for connection in favor of patience, you chipped away at your own emotional presence. You convinced yourself she just needed more time, that she was guarded, that she was complicated in a beautiful way. You gave her grace. You gave her space. You gave her everything but one thing, your boundaries. You thought you were loving her, but you weren't. You were convincing her that you were enough, convincing her that what you offered had value. But love doesn't need convincing. And real connection doesn't require performance. You weren't in a relationship. You were on stage, and she played her part too, dropping breadcrumbs just often enough to keep you coming back. A compliment here, a moment of affection there, enough to make you think she cared, but never enough to feel seen, never enough to feel chosen. And still, you stayed. Because sometimes the hope of being loved feels easier than the pain of admitting you're not. That's the trap. When you love with your whole heart, you assume the other person must feel it too. But the truth is, some people don't want your heart. They want the warmth it gives when they're cold, the attention it provides when they're uncertain. And when they've had enough, they pull back. Not because you did something wrong, but because they were never really reaching for you to begin with. They were reaching for what your desire made them feel. And that's not love. That's convenience. That's comfort. That's emotional entertainment. And if you keep pouring yourself into someone who only needs you when they're lonely, you're not in a relationship. You're in survival mode. Loyalty without reciprocity becomes self-abandonment. And the longer you perform, the further you drift from the man you're meant to be. Not because you weren't enough, but because you kept trying to prove it to someone who wasn't even watching. You kept hoping for applause when what you needed was reflection. Real recognition, real care, real presence. So ask yourself honestly, if you stopped today, would she reach for you, or just replace the mirror you held up to her with someone else? Because the moment you stop performing is the moment you begin to return to yourself. The moment you realize you were never supposed to beg to be loved. You were meant to be met, seen, chosen, not for the show you put on, but for the man you already are. And the moment you remember that is the moment you stop disappearing. Part 4. The man who stopped running became irresistible. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when a man simply stops running, not because he's tired, not because he gave up, but because something inside him wakes up. He sees clearly, perhaps for the first time, the pattern he's been repeating his entire life. The chasing, the proving, the overgiving, the belief that if he just did enough, loved hard enough, showed up long enough, endured patiently enough, then maybe, just maybe, he'd finally be chosen. But the truth is, effort alone doesn't equal love. It doesn't guarantee connection. It doesn't make someone see your worth. What it often does, when there's no balance, is teach others that you'll stay even when they don't. That you'll tolerate being overlooked. That you'll remain in the background, hoping to be brought into the foreground. And so he stops. Not to punish her, not to create absence as a strategy. He stops because he's finally ready to return to himself, to come home to the version of him that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't confuse effort with identity, because he's done watering gardens where the roots never took hold. He's done setting himself on fire to keep a connection warm. He begins to understand that love, real love, doesn't grow in desperation. It grows in groundedness, in truth, in mutual presence. And when that clicks, something powerful takes shape. The boy who once had to chase becomes a man who simply stands still, not frozen, not numb, but centered, steady, certain of who he is, and no longer willing to distort himself for anyone who's unsure about him. In that stillness, he discovers a new kind of strength, not in pursuit, but in peace. He no longer measures his worth by how often someone chooses him. He no longer lives for the validation of being wanted, because he knows, truly knows, that being chosen means nothing if he has to lose himself in the process. He starts leading with calm energy instead of urgency, with intention instead of impulse. He no longer throws his time, care, and heart into people who can't or won't reciprocate. He waits, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, for someone who doesn't just accept his love, but meets it, multiplies it, and guards it. He learns that if you're always trying to be chosen, you'll never feel safe. You'll always be performing, always reaching, always worried that your value depends on someone else's recognition. But when you choose yourself first, when you see your own worth without needing it reflected back, you stop being afraid to walk away. You stop fearing solitude, because you realize solitude isn't emptiness, it's a return to your own wholeness. And in that quiet self-possession, something magnetic happens. He becomes the kind of man a woman can't ignore, not because he plays games, but because he plays none. His peace is loud. His boundaries are clear. His presence doesn't demand attention, it commands respect. He doesn't try to be impressive. He just is, because there's nothing more attractive than a man who no longer chases what diminishes him. The right woman doesn't need to be convinced. She won't require you to prove your worth over and over. She'll feel the difference in you. She'll see it in the way you stand, unapologetically, without the weight of needing her approval. She'll know she's not just being pursued, she's being invited into a space that's already whole, already strong, already stable. Because this man doesn't beg for love, he lives in a way that reflects it. And maybe that's the irony. The moment you stop running towards someone else is the moment you become the one they start moving toward. Not because you vanished, but because you became visible in a new way. Grounded, calm, unshaken. You stopped chasing. You started becoming. And that's when love, real love, finally knows where to find you. You've just seen the truth most men aren't ready to face. But you are, or you wouldn't be here. Maybe you're in that silence right now, still holding on to the hope that she'll reach out, still checking your phone, wondering what you did wrong. But I need to tell you this. If you had to chase it, beg for it, overgive for it, it was never yours to begin with. Her silence? That wasn't confusion. That was your answer. And when you finally stopped filling the gap, you didn't lose her. You stopped losing yourself. Because let's be honest, what you called love wasn't love. It was performance. It was emotional labor dressed up as connection. You weren't being met. You were being used for the attention, the validation, the mirror you unknowingly held up to her ego. And when she returns, not all of them do, but some will, it won't be because she sees your value. It'll be because she misses being seen. She misses how you made her feel about herself. That's not a reason to go back. That's a test, to see if you've really changed, or if you're still willing to trade your peace for her presence. But this isn't about her anymore. This is about the man you're becoming. You're no longer on stage, no longer performing affection hoping someone finally claps, no longer waiting for someone to choose you, because you've already chosen yourself. And when you make that shift, from chasing to standing still, from proving to embodying, that's when something changes. In her, maybe, but more importantly, in you. Here's the life lesson, plain and clear. A man who needs to be chosen will always feel unsafe. But a man who chooses himself first will never be afraid to walk away. So if you're there now, in that space between longing and letting go, breathe, hold the line. Let the silence reveal what words never could. Not just about her, but about you. You don't need to run anymore. Stand still. That's where your power is. That's where she'll feel it. And that's where you'll finally begin to feel it too. If something in this message stayed with you, if it brought you clarity, a sense of steadiness, or simply reminded you that you are not walking this path alone, let that settle. Take a moment, breathe. Reflect on where you are now, not where you wish you were. And if this stirred something, if it spoke to that quiet strength inside you, then like the video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and keep showing up for yourself with calm and conviction. Your silence isn't absence. It's a statement. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't to chase, but to stand still. Until next time, stay rooted, stay real,